Hi, everybody, and welcome back. Today I am joined by Stephanie, who is married to Mickey, who you've probably seen their videos on our channel. If you haven't watched them yet, they're exceptional, and they've been in recovery for 20 years.
Yes, that is correct.
They've seen it, been there, done that, and now they help people both for affairrecovery.com as well as in their own work. They help so many people, both addicts as well as those who aren't necessarily sex addicts, but who are working through recovery. So today, we're going to have a great talk, but we're going to talk about some controversial stuff and some needed discussion within repair work for couples. So thanks for joining me today, Stephanie.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
So Stephanie, you and Mickey were just at our EMS Weekend Intensive.
Yes.
You are modeling for people what recovery looks like. Not that it's been perfect.
Right.
And if anybody's watched your previous videos, they understand you guys have had a hell of a journey. But you guys do your own mentoring and caring for couples. We have you come out all the time and lead groups. Mm-hmm. So you guys are in the weeds of what recovery looks like. You're on the front lines, helping people. When it comes to re-engaging with your partner, whether it be sexually, mentally, emotionally, you guys have had to do a lot of work around that. So what do you think is kind of the gateway to this reconnection, if you will?
Well, being intentional. That's the straight up answer, being intentional. For me, this conversation is just really important because we get this question a lot. How do we do that? And it's one thing to sit there and say, hey, be intentional. But we want to be helpful in that process and help guide people as best we can where they are on the journey.
Because you guys have made mistakes. You've done it right, you've done it wrong. So when someone says, just be intentional, well, you can really screw things up just being intentional without a guidepost or guidelines. So for you, when you say be intentional, what does that kind of boil down to?
Well, Mickey and I are both fans of having a plan, and I know that sounds super boring and that doesn't sound sexy at all, but laying it out because you're both wanting the same end result, but because of the journey and where you may be individually and together, discussing that up front, laying some things out actually helps in that process. It becomes easier as it goes along, but
it's hard
the
to
truth
tell to
is,
start.
yeah, I mean, that's the thing.
There's no easy way to say it.
No, yeah.
So if you're having a hard time, you fit right in because it's just not easy.
Right.
When a couple is trying to re-engage on that level, I mean, we are so intimacy avoidant.
Oh, yes.
Especially the addict. Mm-hmm. And why would an addict's spouse or partner not be intimacy avoidant after all the destruction, all the violation, all the pain? Good Lord, to ask a betrayed partner, especially even in an addiction type scenario, to re-engage with their partner. What made you be willing to re-engage? Before we get into kind of the nuts and bolts, I mean, what made you feel like, you know what, I'm willing to re-engage with Mickey on this level?
There's one phrase that kind of covers it, which is, I did want connection with him more than I wanted disconnection with him. And when I functioned from that place, it did help me push through some uncomfortable moments. But connection can look totally different. Like you said, it's not just about the sexual, it's the emotional, it's the spiritual. And even then on this journey, it's like, how do you even get to where that flows, where the emotions can kind of come back in? And it's always surprising when it does. And that sounds a little crazy, but...
You had to be incredibly gun shy, right? To put yourself out there with Mickey?
Yes, and definitely in our story, and hopefully anyone that's out there, hopefully this is something you can connect with, but in our story, we still were sexually active even though he was acting out and had an affair partner. Though there were times that I could feel the disconnect and I would pursue and get rejected. Now, I would say the pursuing happened before I got disclosure, so I didn't know everything. I was pursuing simply because my husband was disconnecting.
Yeah.
I got rejected. So then on the other side of this, we get into therapy, we're working, we're connecting more on just the topic of what happened. Do we still care for each other? Do we, all of those kind of baseline recovery pieces. It's scary because when you get rejected, to put yourself out there, you already doubt yourself. You doubt your sexuality. You doubt what your husband is thinking about as he's engaging with you. There's a lot of scary things that can filter into the brain.
Absolutely.
Not just on my side, but on his side. For me, that being the first to go in initiation was really scary. And for a while, I actually pulled back away from it. This is kind of our personal sort of dance that had happened was I pursued, I got rejected, I pulled away, we went through recovery. Mickey is a classic avoider. So him really being vulnerable and pursuing me was probably even 10 times scarier than me pursuing him.
Wow.
And we did that for a while. And then, I don't even know, maybe halfway even in our 25 years of marriage, but 20 years of recovery, I think at the halfway mark, he kind of came back around and said, I would like for you to pursue me. And I was like, oh, that actually scared me. Even though healing had happened.
Doesn't matter, absolutely. Yeah. The roles can switch. And I think for any couple in recovery, it's okay if they are in one type of role and then it kind of switches a little bit where the other partner starts to pursue the other one. It can freak you out. You can be like, what's going on? But wouldn't you say that that's healthy?
I actually just felt like that initial, that fear, because yes, it is totally healthy. And the truth is in a healthy marriage, with or without infidelity, right? That dance changes throughout any long-term relationship, any long-term marriage. This is why we kind of circle back around to why intentionality is so important.
Let me be the one to say, sounds awesome. And I'm going to be very sarcastic as I ask you because I know that the betrayed partner or spouses are sitting here going, this sounds awesome, but what about the gigantic amount of reminders and triggers and intrusive thoughts and arrows that are shot at me the moment we start to maybe touch each other or even think for the betrayed partner, even think about being intimate or opening ourselves up to getting connected verbally, mentally, emotionally, like you're a betrayed partner, you get it, you've been through an awful story. So what do? What does the betrayed partner do? Because that scares the hell out of them to even think about it, right?
Oh yeah. And there's a lot of bad information out there that can set you up for failure.
Oh yes.
And even just the whole phrase, push through. That in and of itself is like...
Let's talk about all those. Just stop thinking about it. Yeah. Put it behind you, right? Like smack you on the butt like you're a baseball player. Just put it behind you. Forget about it. Stop fixating, right?
Right.
What are some of the other ones you've heard? Let's just have a comedic moment of insanity.
I mean, I just even went blank because just the idea of someone saying...
Exactly.
Push through, make it about you. Make it about you. Well,
or then stop making it about you.
Or
Come on. Oh my gosh, it's awful. I mean, the advice is wicked sometimes. It really is. And they're trying to mean well. And I think they do mean well, but it's awful. It doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, and the question that comes to mind for me in the midst of that is, okay, so what about that then is healthy and safe? Like if those are words that we use over and over, how do we create that transition in a way that's healthy and safe for both? But because we're addressing our betrayed community out there, right? And I want to look at you all in the face there with that. Boundaries and being honest in this process, right? And so when you feel those fears coming up, and there's so many little things that we can do to set ourselves up for success, even if we, with all best intentions, we pray at the foot of the bed, we do date night, we do all these little things that lead us to that moment. Things are going great, the feelings are all there, and then wham, right? And there's a phrase that I like to apply, which is you do have a choice. And I hate to use all those fork in the road moments because you don't want to have anything come in that really just pulls you so far away from the moment. So I like to use this phrase, which is, you do have a choice. You can shut down or you can slow down.
I love it. And I think any couple that's ever been in that moment has probably wavered between the two. And most of the time, you shut down because you don't know how to handle it.
Right. It's super overwhelming, yes.
Absolutely. And I think you just nailed it. It is so overwhelming. So it's overwhelming for the unfaithful because we're thinking, oh, okay, we're reconnecting. Things look good. And then it's like, no, he or she completely spirals. Now we go into shame. We're just pieces of junk. We're never good. This is all our, we just kind of circle the drain, or we get defensive. Well, why would you even take it this far? And we become just idiots who are wounding them further.
Yes.
But what goes on in the mind of the betrayed? Because that is such an overwhelming moment.
There's a divide that begins to happen because the heart wants what the heart wants, but those thoughts, feelings, fears can paralyze. And if you need to stop, you need to stop.
Absolutely.
If it's escalating to where you need to stop, there's a reason why when I say slow down, I've even learned that by just holding each other's hands, right? By just spooning, tremendous intimacy can happen. And yes, there are moments where you may engage and you might just be sobbing through the entire love-making process, but it's okay because that's real.
Yeah.
And that will subside. I will tell you that will stop if that's what happens for you.
And you would say, because you're a survivor and you guys are 20 years into recovery, so if that happens, that doesn't mean you're doing something wrong.
No.
It doesn't mean that you've missed it. Now, to be fair, sometimes that can be wounding for a betrayed, but sometimes it can be very healing and restorative, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's the thing. And the reason that you're feeling all these emotions are because something real is happening. It feels weird because it doesn't feel the way it felt before.
Yeah.
And the biggest mistake I think the betrayed spouses make is we do this comparison of the lovemaking we had when we were engaged, the lovemaking we had pre-affair. We're measuring everything instead of really just being in the moment and letting the moment be its own tender reconnection moment.
Now, let me ask you this, because I love the tender reconnection moment. But the betrayed has to constantly have this comparison with the affair partner, the affair partners.
Yeah.
For addicts, maybe the porn, the chat rooms. I mean, how did you manage that? Because we're getting into the tediousness of it.
Right.
But it's real. I've had betrayed partners for decades tell me, look, I have all these things come into my mind that I'm not good enough and I don't measure up and he or she really wants to be with them, not me.
Right.
I mean, how did you navigate through that?
Well, there's an aspect of, if we're just going to go straight into therapy, right? If you're hitting that wall over and over and over again and you are paralyzed every single time and you have not done trauma work, you need to go do trauma work.
Exactly.
Like that should be your signal. If every single time you're engaging in an intimate level with your spouse that you get paralyzed, you need to do trauma work. I am a huge EMDR fan, and I will say work on that I did actually. I know that different therapists have a different style in how they do that. For me, my therapist never pushed a particular theme. It was really like, where's my brain going? Let's talk through that. And it actually gave me, for me, this distance, right? Like, I still know what happened. I still have all the knowledge. It just gave me like this healing factor is the best way that I can say it, so that I still have all that knowledge. And I will say our story is a little different in that because of the fact that Mickey had a child with his affair partner and we've had contact with her the last 19 years, and her even after the 19 years, attempting a little pursuit. I did have some old stuff kind of well up.
Absolutely.
And it's one of the reasons why I really wanted to talk about this as well, because it presented an opportunity for Mickey and I to decide. It's why we use that phrase of, shut down, slow down. We didn't even realize we had kind of come upon something really helpful, but Mickey was amazing in this moment with me, and he said, we can go as slow as you want to go.
Yeah, and that's so important.
Yes.
If the unfaithful can't grab hold of that, Because we unfaithful can be so ludicrously stupid. Come on, let's just get it over with. Let's just, and we can speed through these moments, never understanding how much more we are wounding our betrayed partner.
And the funnier part is, and this is a moment where I wish Mickey was sitting right next to me, because he got so much more out of that moment than I did, because he essentially gave me everything I needed in relation to love, support, tenderness, kindness. I mean, all these amazing things, right? Patience, right? And let me sort of just work my own way through the moment, not feeling pressure one way or another.
Because pressure is a killer.
Oh, well, for both sides it is, for sure.
Absolutely, but especially for the betrayed.
Yes.
If they feel pressure to re-engage, so what happens in you if you felt pressured to re-engage at a level that you weren't comfortable with, or at a speed that you weren't comfortable with? I mean, what goes off inside your brain?
You're performing, and you're performing not engaged. And this actually discussion came up and this weekend where, because of addiction, right, and pornography and a lot of use of pornography, that comparison, I would even say a lot of women that their spouses are addicts, they're not comparing themselves, even if there was an affair partner, they're comparing themselves to the image of what they think pornography is.
Exactly.
And they convert that sexual connection moment to a pornographic movie.
And it's very similar to the betrayed male who has this vision of what the affair partner or affair partners or even pornography is like. And for the male, it's a different nuance, but it's in the same gene pool that the comparison that betrayed men feel, they just spiral and they just feel inferior. And so there's nuances to each other's recovery work, but at the end of the day, if you try and rush your partner, it's the death knell.
Yeah.
And I loved what you said, that you're performing. And would you agree that many betrayeds, male or female, feel like they have to perform to reacquire their mate?
Yes. And I actually think it's, aside from getting to, ground zero, getting over those initial grief, forgiveness, all of that. But the truth is, we as human beings are meant to, touch is a tremendous part of us being connected and vulnerable, and it's healing. Touch is an amazing form of healing. And if we get to a place as a husband and wife, right, as a couple trying to connect, let's streamline that down to, as we said, shut down, slow down. Well, if you asked anybody in that moment, do you want to shut down? Even if they have fear, panic, whatever, there's a part of them that wants to say, no, I don't want to shut down.
Right.
But I'm shutting down.
Exactly.
And blah, blah, blah. Like, if you shut down, you shut down.
You restart.
You restart, right?
And here's a few things. I think when a couple shuts down, sometimes it's just a break. Go in a separate room. That betrayed may need to go into a separate room, self-soothe, read some of their stuff that they've saved, right?
Right.
What are some other things that they can do? If they need to retreat and say, honey, I need a few minutes, what would be good for them to do?
I mean, some breathing exercises are pretty basic, but there's two things that on this journey I know that help me. Rick does one, which is getting grounded, putting your 2 feet, sitting down, 2 feet on the floor so your feet are grounded, taking your favorite visual scene, right, taking all the color out of it and repainting it.
Yeah.
I've done that several times over the years if I've really been highly triggered or even angered. And to me, that has been a very calming exercise, especially in the intimate moment, choosing a scene in your head that means something to you as a couple. Because actually, even if you're in a separate room, as you're repainting that image or picture of you and your husband, or a place that matters to you or your wife even, there's a bonding thing that can happen to where when you're ready to engage, there is some tenderness in your heart as a result of that exercise. The other piece was something that John Haney had shared, which I remember, like, mind blown moment, because early on we were talking about the comparative thing, comparing ourselves, whether it be to the AP or pornographic images, putting expectations on ourselves,
Yeah.
right?
Oh my.
And
Absolutely.
you know, old school, the old Cosmo magazine, you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
all those stupid quizzes that are in there and all that stuff. And
Neither of us are old enough for that. We've just heard about it.
Yeah, I guess. Back in the old days. But the comparative thing that people do, right? Like, and literally people will say phrases without really knowing how they're hurting you. But if you're not having sex 5 times a week, then your marriage is falling apart. If you're not having sex, you know, this many times, or you're not doing this, basically you should just kiss your marriage goodbye. It's like
Keep going, sister.
the biggest lies
Yes.
that exist. And I remember somebody throwing that out there about, well, my husband said if I really wanted the marriage and wanted him,
Oh, Lord.
I would make myself available X amount of times.
Oh, Lord. Here we go. Yeah, I know. It's, you know what? If you were just dealing with general marriage stuff, oh, God, sure, try that.
Right. Well, not even, but.
Well, when you're trying to deal with infidelity and betrayal, addiction, trauma, PTSD, that type of stuff is like a styrofoam bullet being launched at a tank. It just has no impact. And, you know, the thing is, when you deal with people who've been through it, when you deal with people who have experienced it and who have gotten through it themselves, there's a level of expertise, there's a level of specificity that can help people feel like, okay, she gets it, this makes sense. Because there's really so much here for the unfaithful to key in and learn from.
Right.
Because if the unfaithful, if you can hear so many of the suggestions that she's making, it can make this at least a little bit easier. Because if you can learn what the betrayed is managing in their brain, it is helpful when an unfaithful can say, hey, you might be feeling X, Y, and Z. It's okay if you're feeling this.
Right.
I'm happy to lay here and hold hands, and that they mean it, right?
And they mean it, yeah.
That it's not just, well, Sam said this, so I just need to say it, or, you know, Stephanie said I should just say this, but really it's a means to an end because I really want to be physical right now. That's a guaranteed disaster approach. Would you agree?
I mean, one point I really want to make here is that recovery does not have to be this robotic,
Yeah,
you know, super planned thing.
exactly.
But there are some things we can do no matter where you are on this journey, right? So there's stuff you could do early on. Gottman Institute has this great stuff, the 6 hours to a better relationship.
Right.
Those are pretty simple, and that's just about touching base with your spouse throughout the day to create connection, right? You can go to the Institute. Guys, you can go to Gottman Institute and look that up, 6 hours to a better relationship. It's really good stuff. For those that are ready to kind of maybe get more into the fun, flirty stuff, there is a doctor that also, I learned about her through the Gottman Institute, but she introduced this 4-step approach.
Yeah.
Talk, touch, tease, tantalize. When you first hear it, if you are still kind of triggered and traumatized, you hear tease, tantalize, you get a little nervous.
Ball game. You're
Right?
probably checking out, right?
Well, one side of the equation is checking out. I can guarantee you the other side is like, ooh, tease, tantalize. So it sounds a little dangerous, but the fun part about this is if you and your spouse commit to, they're saying 5 minutes on each of these things. It's actually all about physical connection, not physical intimacy. Yet, physical intimacy is where this is leading.
Absolutely.
So the idea is engage and talk 5 minutes a day with your spouse. How are you? How's your day? What's your plan for the day? Touching, it's just non-sexual touch that is, you know, a hand on the shoulder, a hand on the knee, just even as you walk past each other. As we said before, you know, touch is healing. So that touch matters more than it seems in that moment. The tease and tantalize is still non-sexual touching. It's the teasing is more of that flirty banter of, hey, I've been really thinking about you this week. Can we do a movie together? I really would like that time with you. And you really make it about the person, you know. I remember that one of your favorite dishes was something. I'd love to, you know, maybe just a fun memory or something that is at least letting you know that you're thinking about the spouse, that you want alone time with the spouse, connection time with the spouse. And then the tantalize piece is actually still non-sexual touching. It's just more watching a movie holding hands, going for a walk and holding hands, coming up from behind, the spouse while they're doing the dishes, or they're doing something and you just want a little bit longer than just the graze touching, right? You just want a little hug, or...
It can be foreplay.
Yes.
Or it can just be progressive. Hey, this needs to be a part of our life. So let's start out slow and easy.
Exactly.
And get comfortable. Because I think the overarching theme is connection, right?
That's it. And the connection leads to the feelings, which leads to the fun action.
Because if you're not connected, and I think so many betrayed partners would say, I can't do any of this if we're not connected. Mm-hmm. And as we kind of land the plane of the discussion, the reality is that how you connect is not always this way, but connection also is following the steps that you've laid out, but doing your work, man, behind the scenes, working hard. What betrayed partner is going to want to connect with an unfaithful that's not doing work? Because that can be foreplay, right? I think you mentioned it in one of our other videos that sometimes Mickey would say, I learned this and I thought about this, and that to you was almost a form of foreplay, right?
Yes, oh, for sure. But I will say, in this area, right? And one of the things that we've identified, not just Mickey and I, but Affair Recovery, a lot of the words that are used, habits, patterns, routines, right? And I love good alliteration, so I'm going to say the pattern leads its way to the passion. And I'll say it again. The pattern leads its way to the passion. So great. Even though this may sound mundane and silly, if you get into the habit of doing these things, the passion will follow. And that's an encouragement that I want to put out there to you guys. We've done that. We found ourselves applying this touch, talk, tease, tantalize. And all of a sudden I was like, we're fun again.
Yeah.
It's
so good that you say that, because recovery doesn't have to be like this. You guys haven't had 20 years of just mundane, just grin and bear it, go along to get along. You guys, off camera as well as on camera, but off camera, you guys are so fun, and it's just great to be around you because you're regular people. That's why so many people at our EMS weekend love it when you guys are mentors, because you're just hanging out, regular people. Not every word out of your mouth is about recovery. Yeah. And so, today, I think you have so much to give. And so if you're watching this, I want to encourage you, if you have a question, if you have a comment, leave it on whatever platform you're watching this on, because there's so much to learn from Stephanie. I think anybody that's watched one of your videos would say that you're a rock star in recovery. And so we as an organization are so grateful to have you come in and just share what's worked and what hasn't worked, because you've got to hear from people who've been through it. So thank you for coming in.
Thank you, sir.
Awesome job as always.
Thank you.